I'm Stephen Shiell, I'm from Surge CoOp, and I'm here to talk about our project for Thames, Socially Thames Festival, called River Walk, River Talk and River Listen. And I'm really excited to be here, and it's really nice to meet you and have a chat.
Yeah, so my name's Laura, I work for Thames Landscape Strategy, and I'm here to talk about my project Rewilding Arcadia.
Sounds great. I love the word Arcadia.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know what it means.
No, I can imagine.
Spent half my job explaining that and the other half doing the other
Can
thing.
you explain it again?
Yeah, so it's sort of like, we call it like a rural paradise in the city. It kind of represents all those historic palaces and villas of Richmond, Kingston, Twickenham. So it sort of encompasses all of that.
Nice.
It's a name we've inherited, but we like it.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Yeah.
What about your name, Surge CoOp?
Well, we're on a river, so our project is to reanimate and house the Bowback River and the Channel Sea River and the tidal part of the River Lee. We're a cooperative moorings group.
Okay.
And in part of that, a lot of our artwork and engaging with the community about who we are and what we're doing. But really, we're there to kind of help the river and to give housing. So a surge, kind of the tidal Thames.
Surge, yeah.
Seems corny, but
I like
apt.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's powerful.
It's powerful, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what kind of art do you guys do? What sort of projects?
Some really nice stuff around. Like one of the projects that we do is called "The Bend in the River is My Home," and it's just about engaging and talking about what's happening on the river and how people can access it, how people can learn about the ecologies and what's going on. Sadly, our river's dead. It's actually at the foot of the northern outfall. So, as you're from West London, all of your stuff comes there and sometimes gets dumped into the river. And has been for the last 80 years. It's very polluted from a lot of industrial heritage but at the same time, everyone's approach to rivers now is very different. And as you know, not so long ago, the Thames was declared dead in the 50s. Now seen as one of the most vibrant rivers in Europe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think looking at that kind of biodiversity increase is a massive part of our project anyway. Yeah. And I assume for you guys as well.
Yes. And I think also we've been looking at the river as like an entity on its own, like they call this Mother Thames, or there's another goddess. I can't remember her name. Anyway, come to me. But seeing it from that perspective, so we do a lot of kind of listening projects. We've got a whole set of projects where we walk and talk, we clean up, and at the same time we do some kind of bug studies. We do observational drawing, which we did this weekend. So it's not always, sometimes we get people to clean up and tidy up and then that's kind of the end, but we like to kind of include other things. I think a lot of people really respond to that. They kind of
I like the way you said that, because in our rewilding project, we're talking about letting the river guide us. That's the rewilding element. So the river's going to do what it does, and essentially we're just helping that along. And
it's a good way of seeing it, isn't it?
Yeah, and thinking of it as its own person is really important, because I think then people feel that need to look after it and have that kind of stewardship of the land. But yeah, we're looking similarly. We do lots of walks and talks. Recently, we did a guided tour on sort of paddleboard and canoe to kind of for people to look at the banks from the river as a different perspective.
That's really nice.
And also part of our project is using a camera obscura. So do you much?
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So it's just sort of it's an old style way, like a 17th century way of looking at the landscape. So it's how they looked at the landscape before photographs. So we're having people come into the camera obscura and then draw what they see surrounding, but from inside, and how that can then change with time. So looking at this space and thinking, oh, I could put a wetland in here. How's that going to look in 50 years with climate change, things like that. So having that kind of relationship with the river, and I really like listening to it as well. That's really nice.
Yeah, I come from I teach a thing called deep listening, which is a kind of practice formed by Pauline Oliveros, from the 60s, about finding another language through listening and full body listening and dream listening, which is kind of like the camera obscura. It's like dreaming a new way of seeing a space or understanding it. we've done a river walk where we walked in the mud silently of 9 sound artists from Newham specifically, all with microphones on, and I mixed them up and produced a radio piece that we put out, which was actually a really lovely way of like kind of using our bodies to like wade through mud, pollution, but not talk about it, just hearing the sounds of the river itself, and and then afterwards that ephemeral moment where the water comes in and washes it all away, like our footprint on the land sometimes is only here for a moment, right? And then, which I think rivers kind of teach us a little bit about that.
I heard a nice, something my granddad used to say is that we're just passing through.
We are.
I really like that.
It's a good thing, isn't it? That we're just passing through. Yeah.
You shouldn't really be leaving your mark anyway.
No. That's true. Our particular project, what's quite sad about our river, but actually at the same time isn't sad, is that we were told that, well, it's been culverted. So I think there was like this secret meeting in London at some point where they decided, I think it was like kind of the beginning in the 70s, that the whole of London was just going to be concrete. So they were just going to concrete loads of things up. They were concreting rivers, they were blocking them up. They were like, I don't know what planet they were on, but they did it in Stratford. They basically culverted the Channel Sea from its fresh water source, which is in Herefordshire, Luton. But you can still walk it, and it's still got some of the old heritage, like kind of signs of where the river was. So our project is going to start where it kind of lived, and then walk this kind of moment of it being underground, but still there's still evidence that it's still there, and then go back to the beginning of where the river is, where it's been culverted. But it's really sad when a river is tidal and it loses its fresh water source, which actually kind of creates a horrible kind of, well, it doesn't allow biodiversity to happen because it's losing its fresh water source and it's always getting salt water or brackish water. But then we did a saline test the other week and it's fine.
Oh.
I know, how surprising.
That's good to
know. I know, even without its fresh water source, it's actually, and what we found was that when the Thames comes in, it's so powerful that it pushes this water along the Lee into where the Channel Sea is, and that force from the water that's coming from Prescott Lock, Bow Locks, and from the mills, there's 3 mills there, it pushes the salt water from that, where they're still connected with the fresh water, enough along the river. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was a bit shocked. So, we're kind of building an orchard at the moment, and with Thames Water, or for Thames Water on Thames Water's land. And I said we're refusing to put any trees in unless they give us a tap, and they can't give us a tap. You probably should edit that out, but and then they won't. But they've given us a pump, so we can use the water from. So that's why we had to get the saline test. So we found out that the water is perfectly fine for trees, which is a really good thing, and actually quite a much nicer solution to take the water from the river and feed and water the trees than having a standard tap. Yeah.
We've in our kind of neck of the woods, we've got a tidally fed wet woodland,
okay,
we call it, which is one of the UK's rarest habitats.
Oh wow!
And it sustains, different fungi and different insects, and it's something that we're certainly looking at in our project to kind of enhance. And as you were mentioning, sort of salinity changes with climate change, we're in a couple of our projects we've been planting some more kind of tolerant species, so that when that salinity does change due to climate change, we can have something that can withstand that.
Yeah, we've been looking into that. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at, as a CoOp, we decided we were going to just concentrate on apples. But then I can't remember.
Did you say apples?
Just apples, yeah.
Okay.
So obviously there's millions of fruit trees, right?
Yeah.
Or all different types of orchards. So just apples. But then we've been looking at like what apples will survive climate change, like in the next 15 years, like what trees will fare, like as our winters become shorter. A lot of the English apples now really need the winter to be able to fruit. And then as our winter's becoming milder and milder, and we're becoming hotter and wetter, things will change. It's actually quite an interesting subject, actually, looking at species that are going to thrive later on in life. Like, for the first time ever, I've grown grapes on my allotment, and they ripened, and they were delicious, which is kind of scary and quite cool at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. With our project, we're looking at, instead of planting trees, a lot of the time we'll still plant trees, but having wetlands instead, and how that can be good as well for climate change, and having kind of accessibility for the public, but also having those areas to be allowed to grow back. So.
It's really weird, like how we at the moment we've just started a monthly clean-up and chat and just like talk about getting people involved, and we find that we get some people involved, and people come from all over when we have talks and stuff, but it's sometimes quite difficult, isn't it, like engaging with different groups. Like we've joined recently a community assembly, which seems to be a really nice way of connecting with all the projects that are happening around and kind of firming links and stuff, but at the same time it's kind of I don't know, it's sometimes quite difficult sometimes to recruit or to get people to be involved. But at the same time, Totally Thames, that sold out, like, I don't know if it has sold out, like, instantly. We've got friends that were just saying, just come anyway, it's fine, don't worry about it. But
yeah, we don't really have, because we're having it at Sign House, so it's kind of in the gardens bit, so it's not really like a set number of people that can come, but obviously, not too many. But yeah, we picked that site particularly because it's the only natural riverbank on all of the Thames. So how it would have looked in, the 1600s, it still looks like that. And it's a really important area for birds. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do, is create that habitat elsewhere, so it's more kind of link that wildlife corridor, I guess. Yeah, and I know what you mean about linking community groups. It can be quite difficult, but through the art, is always really good. And I like having kind of personal stories in that art as well, because obviously everybody has a different memory of the river that brings them to it, and to have that kind of space to think, and everybody uses it for different things. Some people cycle, some people play football, some people walk or just meditate. So I guess linking all of that is really
it's quite nice, the idea. It sounds really pristine, your site. Ours is like really industrial, and like it's the northern outfall, there's real Thames water infrastructure that's quite ugly, and our site has got no bin, so it's always constantly looks really like not very nice place to hang out. There's some other issues that are, I wouldn't say they're antisocial, but they're not so great. But then I went there with this guy called Russell Miller, who's like an invertebrate expert, and he did a study for us because we're doing a lot of observations of the space, and he got so excited he couldn't drag him away for like 5 hours. He was like he found 50 odd species without trapping, 3 that are nationally rare. But you look at this site and you just think it's awful, but then if you go a bit deeper, it is quite complex and really amazing. It really blew my mind, actually. I was quite, and his as well, he was like really shocked to find certain things. He had a big argument about a wood ant with an ant specialist at some point, but it's not a wood ant. It was just an ant that looked like a wood ant. But our site in some ways, and people do like it when they go there to see more than what actually kind of. But
I think that kind of industrial side has a beauty to it as well. Yeah. I think, I mean, we're lucky in the Arcadian Thames because it's, you've had artists and poets that have been inspired by this landscape, but that's only because it's been protected from overdevelopment, because we have all these kind of landmarks like Hampton Court Palace and all that, so it's very lucky. But then in the same sense, there are areas where it could be improved in terms of pollution, and it's surprising to what you said, because species can be so resilient, and we're still learning things all the time. For instance, we had a project where we've created these flood meadows, so it's incredible the amount of species that we found there, and we're putting in sluices, and they said, don't bother putting in eel passes, there's not any here. As soon as it was blocked up, all of these eels just came from nowhere, and it's a really important migration route. So they were like, quick, and they were picking up the eels and throwing them back into the river while they were making those eel passes. So
amazing.
Yeah, I think, you know, nature has a way of bringing itself back. So I guess we don't really know what we have at our sites a lot of the time. So doing that surveying is so important.
It's amazing, isn't it? Where it really open. And others, when they got to do it themselves, so when we did like a citizen science thing with Russell, and the way he described the site, it really did bring about a new appreciation for it. But there are other bits to it, like there's a long wall path, which is really amazing. It's full of nut trees and is a part of London that's back, like kind of if you go back in the 70s or the 60s. It feels really old. And then there's an island there that's a man-made island that's now the only self-seeded forest in Newham.
Wow.
And it's housed a German hairy snail.
We have German hairy snails too.
They're great, aren't they?
They love them at Woodland.
They really do.
And I have to say as well, there are areas kind of on my part of the river that are more industrial as well. And so, for instance, Harmland is an area that we work in, and it was all a lot of rubble from London from World War II was put there.
Okay.
And it's a lot higher than it should be, but it's formed a really amazing habitat of acid grassland, which is really important, which we would have had if it wasn't for that rubble there. So I guess industry in a way has a way of
leaving some really nice deposits.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
So we never know.
Yeah. We were excited about the island because it could become later on in years to come a nice nature reserve that has a bridge that you only can access when the tide's out.
Oh wow.
So you can't stay for long.
Yeah.
So
nature has its time, and then we have our time to visit.
Exactly. I kind of like that idea. It's a nice thing to be involved in. Yeah.
But yeah, that place with the rubble is now a nature reserve. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I should come and visit.
Yeah, I should come and visit you.
Yeah, you should. We could take you out on the boat.
Oh, that would be incredible.
Yeah. One of the members from Surge grew up in Kew Gardens.
Oh, really?
Was born in Hanwell, and then grew up in Kew for a long time. Now she lives in East London. Defected from the west to the east. But it's quite funny how they are completely connected by these rivers, right?
Yeah, and
these bodies of water.
Absolutely, and that's something that I'm keen to say, especially because you have different groups of people in different areas, and obviously, it's good to be local in terms of doing environmental work, but you've really got to see the bigger picture of how that links, and how what you do affects what happens downstream, and how rivers don't recognise boroughs or.
They don't, do they? I think boroughs don't recognise rivers either. They always seem to be like, that's not my river, or that's not my pollution that's moving along the river.
Yeah, we've all got to kind of chip in and take responsibility for certain areas.
Yeah. And it's surprising when you actually do that work, how lots of people turn up and go, oh, I love coming here and I love being involved. And we get some really amazing people coming with really great stories. One was that Gandhi used to walk along the sewage pipes and would often sit on the bridge, the Channel Sea Bridge, and meditate out, because it actually is a really lovely vista. But I would imagine then there was, at the end of it now, it's the whole Canary Wharf, but it wouldn't have been there when he was visiting. But it's always a lovely story to hear that someone else of that stature came and thought it was beautiful, because it is actually. It's a moments where it just looks so beautiful, and all of the other stuff kind of fades away. Yeah.
We focus a lot on vistas and with vistas in our work as well, just kind of preserving those sight lines, and it's really nice just to have.
Because you never know, do you, who's coming and who sits there and draws, or who sits and meditates, or has chats or memories of yeah.
When you engage with the community, and a lot of times we did the immersion of Ganesh as a festival, and a lot of communities don't realise that you can access the river, that the river isn't inaccessible. It's you can go down to a lot of the time, and I think obviously there's gates and no access points, and obviously if you follow kind of don't know, correct procedures, you can actually access the river.
I actually am an artist, so
Oh, right.
so I can't think any way other than from an artist's perspective. So all my engagement with the people on our site is from an art perspective. So I do a lot of sound stuff. So I do a lot of listening, like stream boxes on rivers, and just have moments where you just listen to the landscape. And then a lot of people, get a lot out of that in some ways. And we then stream them as well. Like we streamed it at COP26. Yeah. In the fringe of COP26 as a very polluted river having a voice, as something that you could just listen to.
Well, I come at it from a different perspective, a science background.
Okay, there you go.
But I like working with artists. I'm doing that at the minute, and also so we have a playwright that's doing our play for us at the Totally Thames, but also wants audience participation to have people's kind of views of the river and working that into it. But it's a really interesting way to engage with people, because I think art's something that can bring everyone together, and a lot of the time, coming for a clean-up, and it can be quite disheartening being like, okay, the river is polluted, yes, we have rubbish, but actually, making something from that.
Yeah, it's nice, right? Yeah. I like it too.
So I'm looking forward to the play, because as I was saying earlier, we're coinciding it with the high tide.
Oh, nice.
So everyone's going to sit and watch the play while the water rises up around them.
Oh,
no one's going to get wet and no one's going to be in trouble, but it's because our whole motto for our project is what's wet now is going to get a lot wetter, and they can actually see that around them. So it's our way of saying these changes are going to happen. Are we prepared? Probably not.
Well, we're talking about it, aren't we? I think art allows that engagement, doesn't it? Without it being too heady.
Yeah.
And, allows that discourse to happen. I mean, that's a lot of the art engagement we do at Surge is about just the chats, really, and just the conversations. And then you find that a lot of people can bring their own artistic kind of endeavours to projects, or be inspired by it and then it's quite nice. Like
and then you get volunteers, and you don't even realise, one's a historian, one's an artist, one's and you have all these skills, and then putting them into practice is really
cool. We just did it because of this actual the river walk, river talk, river walk. Listen, a volunteer, Laura Band, who's an amazing artist herself, had done the whole thing, and we kind of afterwards talking, we was like, well, you should actually lead this walk. You know more than me. She was like, no. It was quite interesting. And then we're going to commission her to actually do the work that she'd done in the past. We never knew that she had actually done that. It was quite fascinating.
So we did a riverfly monitoring. Do you guys do riverfly monitoring?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Oh yeah, so it helps you monitor the kind of health of the river by finding what macroinvertebrates live in it. So if you monitor them every month, and then if there's been a pollution incident or something like that, it's a really good way of monitoring it. But it's citizen science based.
Okay.
And I had a citizen scientist come along and called Morgan, and she's an artist, and actually this has then kick-started a project that we want to do together kind of off the back of that, which is
really
engaging with people and using art as a way of doing that. And she's doing her PhD, so then that helps her research. So it's kind of working with the community can really open these doors that you didn't even know were possible.
Well, we found one thing. We found a tuberflex in our mud.
Okay.
That's it. But we
said it was dead.
Apparently that's what they found in the Thames as well when they declared it.
Right, okay.
I think it can live. It's one of those species that could live through anything. But we have been building lots of surrogate habitats, with the community, which has been really nice. And then they get full of invertebrates and flies, but we've never done a study of them yet.
Yeah, you should.
Be interesting. Yeah.
It's, so we did it with ZSL, and you do the riverfly monitoring, and then you set up people to kind of monitor it over time, and it's really easy. All you have to need is a bucket and a sieve, and away you go. Obviously you have to identify them, but it's a really good way of monitoring the habitat. But that's sort of the thing we do, is create these alternative habitats for the wildlife to colonise, and then it's amazing. You come back. So we're going to do some planting in this pond, and we got rid of this self-seeded sycamore, so we made space, and we did this thing called spiling, which is sort of like a natural fence, and you put live willow shoots in, and then they take root and then stabilise the banks, and then you kind of weave in between them. And we came back, we were going to do planting come spring, and it had all just come back.
There's a seed bank in the river.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So it all just did it on its own, and it's amazing how it can just kind of, like I said, bounce back.